I'm going to take you through quite a complex sequence. This is actually from a music video for a DJ called James Sibilia, and it's actually a corporate video, effectively, for Pioneer to show off one of their products. But they get James into the studio, and then we do fun things with him to kind of show what the product can do. Anyway, this is a small clip from it, and the brief on this one was effectively we call it shark bait, and the idea is that James is underwater, and we want to show some sharks and fish and things kind of swimming around him as he's playing with the decks. Anyway, I'll show you how this particular shot is comprised. The very first thing we need to do is go into the studio and shoot James. We've got a nice green backdrop. There's a little bit of light reflection happening across the across this kind of set we've done. What we did with that, we had a fan blowing some kind of foil, and it just gives you those kind of nice kind of caustic kind of refractions that you'd get if you were underwater, just to add a little bit of interest to him. We also had a bit of a fan to blow his hair there as well. But the next thing we do is we get rid of the green screen. I use what I call a key for that. I'm going to take you through layer by layer of how I built this shot up. The very first thing I do is created some water, and you can see it just undulates very softly. The next thing to go over the top of this are some statues. Effectively doing here is flipping over to my 3D software, and this is where I created these little Kon-Tiki Easter Island statues. I thought it would be quite fun to have these guys, and if you look carefully, they're actually wearing Pioneer headphones as well. If I wanted another one in the background there, I could always make another one. And then I give it a nice kind of stony texture and run some nice lighting across them. So we end up with this kind of effect. I then add those to our sea background we just had a look at, and we end up with this kind of effect. Now the next thing I do is start adding the sharks in. Again, the shark here is another 3D graphic object. So what we have here is a completely CGI shark, and you can see I can swim him away from the camera towards the camera. Again, all these elements are actually done a bit like on green screen, but because we're using CGI here, we can use a different channel for our transparency. They're all done against a null background, so I can then very easily put him above both the Kon-Tiki men and our sea background. Now the next stage is to add our DJ, and then I'm just going to drop him straight on the top of this background like this, and there he is. Now at the moment it doesn't look very real, he's very bright and the whole thing is a bit of a mess as far as the colours and things go, but I'll sort all that out later. Now one of the biggest issues I had is I just didn't like this DJ plinth that he was on. I thought it looked a bit stark and a bit naff. So what I decided to do was build in 3D a kind of a coral plinth, and it gets rid of it. I then add that to everything else we have going on around it, and it looks like he's kind of playing on a bit of coral there. But Pioneer weren't happy about that. They wanted to brand it a bit, so added a Pioneer logo to the front of the coral. So next, wanted to put something else in the foreground there, something to give it a bit of movement and things. Secondary movement's always really great in animation. So what I've done here is I've made some weeds, and there's my weeds, and again CGI elements, and they're just kind of floating around and wiggling around there nicely. Now this is when things get a bit interesting. Now the problem is with this shot we have is that it's a bit bright, it's a bit too colourful for my liking. It doesn't look very underwatery. So what I want to do is add a few effects to this to kind of merge everything together and make it a bit more kind of underwater looking. So if I add this in here, this effectively is a layer which completely changes the tint of everything, and before you know it, everything starts looking as if it's kind of from the same colour tone family. So next I'm going to add a couple more layers. We've got what I call a devilfish here, and then I've got another layer of the shark, and we've then got some what I call some smoke objects. So this is what starts adding a bit of realism to things. This is real smoke. It's proper filmed smoke. Of course, when you're on the sea floor and there's all these things moving around, you have lots of kind of particles and debris in the water. So this is to simulate a bit of that. So what I do, I take the smoke, I tint it a greeny colour, and I stick that over the top. You can see it just adds a subtle bit of kind of undulation in the background there. Again, same kind of thing here. Again, another physical effect. I've got some bubbles, and again these are proper bubbles filmed in a black water tank. Chuck those over the top, and you end up with some nice kind of bubbles moving across James here. There we go. So just to finish off, these are some light rays that I rather like. We put those over the top, and that kind of makes it look as if some rays coming in from the top of the sea here. Finish off here by just kind of tweaking the colours a bit nicer and adding a bit of a glow, and you end up with the whole scene kind of pulled together as a sequence. So I hope this gives you a bit of an insight into how this is done, and how you can take something that's shot in a green screen studio and place people into completely different environments, and make something that could be your standard kind of DJ promo into something that's a little bit special.